I'm gonna build you a house. Right here. Our house.
I was immediately drawn to the sincerity of this love between these two people.
I want to take Mildred up to D.C. to get married. Are you sure about that?
It just seemed like the most beautiful love story that hadn't really been told.
The project actually came to me. It was Colin Firth and Jed Doherty, his producing partner. They have Rain Dog Films, and Nancy Bursky, who made a documentary called The Loving Story. This was back in 2012. They approached me with Nancy's documentary, and I sat to watch it, and I was floored.
A casting director, Francine Mazer, invited me in to meet Jeff for this film, and I thought, wow, incredible. And they sent me the documentary that Nancy Bursky did. And I watched that over and over again for 2 days, and I fell completely in love with this couple.
Mildred.
Yes?
Would you marry me?
I was familiar with the case, Loving versus Virginia, but not familiar with the couple. You know, the human beings behind the case. And I was sort of intrigued by why there wasn't more information about them.
The documentary does things that our film can't do. The documentary goes into details about the court case that we don't really go into. But in doing that, it helped define kind of what I didn't want to do. I'm very big on point of view. And I knew that I would choose Richard and Mildred as my point of view characters for this film. That's who I wanted to be with. And because they did not attend the Supreme Court oral arguments, because they really weren't part of the legal system and the intricacies that navigated this case all the way to the Supreme Court, I knew we would be someplace else. So already, the back third of this documentary is going to be much different than my film. And now I've got to go find out just what they were doing in that period of time, which was difficult. There's not a lot of information about it. So that was the biggest divergence, I think, was, all right, I want to see just around the edges of this beautiful archival footage of the real Richard and Mildred, just around the edges of the Gravelette photographs that were in Life magazine. I want to see them in their day-to-day life, because there's a bigger statement being made there, which is as important as all the topics that this story touches on, racial equality, marriage equality. There is something more important, which is the idea of humanity at the center of all those things, these two people. And by showing them together in their home with the beautiful children that they're raising, I think you start to get to that point.
We're also incredibly grateful to have access to this footage on a purely practical level. When you're constructing your character, you know, it's like, it feels in many ways your homework has been done for you, because you have the person living and breathing and walking and talking in front of you. You know, and as an actor, that's just priceless, because it gives you the opportunity to not mimic their performance, but take, you know, indicators from that about body language, the way they moved, how their gait, the way they held themselves, or, you know, the way Mildred spoke and her tone and pitch and all those things. It's incredibly helpful.
You think you'll lose?
Well, yes. But I think it's all right. We may lose the small battles, but win the big war.
When you look at Mildred in this archival footage, I'm seeing one of the most beautiful, kind of elegant, and eloquent people that I've ever seen. But there's also this earthiness to her. She comes from this rural place. She comes from the earth. But there's an essence that's so hopeful and just sincere, that when I wrote that part, I wrote that thinking of her. So you have to find someone that can embody that, not just show up and do a good dialect. You have to have somebody that is going to have that nature in her pores. And Ruth was the first one to walk in the door. We had a casting session out in LA. Francine Mazer, my casting director, called Ruth in, and she was the first one. And she walked in the door, sat down. I wasn't familiar with her work. I didn't know she was Irish. And the voice came out. But also beyond that, the countenance, the posture, everything was clicking. And it was really undeniable. From that point on, we had a QuickTime file of her performance. And I would take it whenever we sat with an investor. And they'd say, "Who's Ruth Negga?" And I would show them this clip. And I'd say, "She's Mildred." And there was really no arguing. No one questioned it at all. I think when you witness talent at work, which is what Ruth is, it's pretty undeniable.
I also think what's very clever, what Jeff has done, is by sort of circumventing the kind of courtroom drama aspect, is that you concentrating on these two human beings, because that's who's at the center of this couple, is that sometimes by doing that we forget the humanity behind these people, you know? And also, you know, I do think that there is an extraordinary tension in our film without there being, you know, an explosion or big fight. You know, you do feel there's a palpable energy and a sense that of threat that's quite pervasive. And I think that's incredibly clever to do, because without doing it in a really obvious way, and I just am really impressed by that.
I believe this is a battle that could go all the way to the Supreme Court.
We ain't heard anybody.
The state of Virginia will argue that it is unfair to bring children of mixed race into the world.
Even though the film doesn't go into the intricacies of the court case, I still studied them. And you just read over and over again, Loving v. Virginia, Loving v. Virginia. If you speak to a law student and you say Loving, they think of a court case. They think of precedent. And it almost seemed like their last name had been robbed of its real meaning, of the kind of humanity behind it. And I felt like we could reclaim that a little bit and take this term, as it has become, especially in the legal community, and take it back to maybe its foundational meaning.
Joel is an incredibly kind and supportive actor. You know, in a strange, beautiful way. Like our communication sort of mirrored the Lovings a bit. There wasn't that much discussion about how we would play a scene, but I think it was implicit and explicit that we wanted to both do this couple justice, and I think that we very much had an unspoken agreement that we would support one another as much as possible. And Joel puts it very beautifully. He said we both felt we were both carrying a really special, beautiful piece of art, and we had to mind one another while we were minding it. Yeah, I think he's incredible. I'm blown away when I watch the film by his performance. He disappears into Richard.
How many races do you want, Rich?
A lot.
I've been married for 8 years, and I now have a son who's 6. I think a lot about what my role is and what my responsibility is to them. And it can't help but find its way into my stories. Now, this story found me. You know, this story came to me, but I saw myself in it. You know, I saw my same fears and worries and doubts and concerns, as well as all of these other topics. And that's what you really, you know, that's the type of project you want to work on, whether I'm creating it from scratch or finding it in this situation, is something that operates on multiple levels. But there's no doubt the character of Richard Loving is very much in my wheelhouse.
I believe wholeheartedly it's a universal story. I mean, the themes are of love and humanity, you know, and those are universal things. And I think the thing is that this isn't any one person's story. It's our story. It's definitely my story. And it's the story of many people, but also everyone, so many different kinds of people have seen this film and they've come out saying this couple were incredible and they move people, and I think they do. They've enriched my life, and I think that's what people feel when they meet them, and they think, gosh, I think I'm a better person in some way for having encountered this couple.
Is there anything you'd like me to say to the Supreme Court Justices of the United States?
Yeah. Tell the judge I love my wife.